In this clip we're going to have a quick look at the major topic of Alexander's administration and his dealing with the Persians. Remember, for any question on administration it could also be asked as statesmanship, and you're going to have to look at similar issues. If we're going to look at Alexander's control over the Persian Empire, it's useful to have a little step back and have a little look at how the Persian Empire was before Alexander's invasion and some of the challenges to any ruler. Remember, the Persian Empire was colossal. There's a massive diversity of language, religion and culture, powerful satraps in fringe areas particularly, and some really hostile areas in order to control. We know lots already about the Ionian Greeks, but don't forget we've also got Egyptians, Sogdians, Bactrians, and Bias, remember, had just won a civil war, so the Persian Empire was reasonably split and maybe a little bit weaker. In order to deal with all of these problems and try and unite the Persian Empire under one legitimate ruler, Alexander really tried to press home the spread of pan-Hellenic culture in order to unify his new subjects. Now, if we're going to have a look at Alexander, his administration, and then his spread of Hellenic culture, what we can do is we can split our topic into three key areas. These are our three key areas. There's actions and policies in Persia. Obviously, we've got to include our Greek city-states in any administration statesmanship question, and also Egypt. In terms of his actions and policies in Persia, Alexander is well renowned for his building of his Alexandrias, his city building, often on pre-existing sites but also on new ones, a centre for veterans and traders, based on Hellenic towns and layout in terms of a central agora and grid system. This is probably one of his greatest and most influential things that Alexander does during his career, is his city building as a vehicle for the spread of Hellenic culture. In terms of dealing with problems in Persia and those attempts to unify the country, Alexander does display a tremendous degree of racial tolerance and religious tolerance. Remember, he rebuilds the Temple of Baal in Babylon. And also there's a real emphasis on inclusion of Persians in government. Don't forget the coinage stuff as well. Alexander does maintain the satrapy system, which is often used to criticise him. However, it's a really short-term measure. We never know, remember, what Alexander was planning long-term. There are initial positives in it, that the Persians feel included in the system, and certainly the example of Mazaeus is a great example of Alexander's continuation of the satrapy system working well for him. However, there are poor appointments, remember. When Alexander returns from the Gedrosian desert, we've got several governors that have abused their position, possibly raiding Cyrus the Great's tomb. Cleomenes and Harpalus, remember, are both Greek Macedonian examples of poor appointments, and also you do have the Spitamenes revolt, which is a great example of Alexander's policies in Persia not working. An additional way that Alexander attempted to show himself as a legitimate Persian ruler was in his adoption of Persian customs. These were highly controversial, especially towards conservative Macedonians, such as Alexander's adoption of Persian dress, his use of Persian satraps, but also his marriage to Roxana, his promotion of the 30,000 epigonii, and his attempts to include or force obeisance into his court, which is what the Callisthenes and the conspiracy of the pages really sort of is a reaction against. So once we've dealt with Persia, we can then look at our two other examples. One is Egypt, which really breaks the mould in terms of Alexander returning power to the conquered, the former owners of the power. In Egypt, remember, Alexander does things differently. He holds on to Egypt very tightly in a way that he feels that Egypt is too powerful for one man to have control over. Alexander, remember, is declared pharaoh. He also founds Alexandria, and at Egypt we also have the journey to Siwa to consult the oracle of Ammon. Egypt is tightly controlled. We've got two Egyptian rulers of both the upper and lower, so Egypt is split. We've also got Greek governors of the east and western frontiers, Macedonian garrisons and mercenaries, and in addition we've got military commanders of Upper and Lower Egypt as well. Remember, the two Egyptian rulers had no access to the Macedonian garrisons, so Egypt really is concentrated with a lot of forces. Our final example would be the Greeks, and we already know that Alexander does attempt to involve himself in Greek affairs regularly. Remember, he's the hegemon of the League of Corinth, and we've got pros and cons of his relationship with the Greeks, as you know from your Greek revision. Obviously, don't forget the Exiles Decree, which is a great example of administration towards the Greek city-states. If we're going to conclude Alexander and administration, I suppose we've got to see that there's a tremendous amount of toleration. There's certainly a degree of continuation, particularly in the satrapy system. There's also an inclusion of Persians in the system, such as Darius' brother, Mazaeus as well. And with the exception of the Spitamenes revolt and the satraps who abuse their position after the Gedrosian Desert, there's a large degree of stability.